All right, Ian, Stanley, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. Excited to be here.
Yeah, it's been playing a bit of, I guess, Google Calendar tag. Finally had an opportunity to connect here. So I'm excited. I've done a bit of a dive into you. I found your Instagram to be quite interesting because typically I get a lot of marketers on here pushing frameworks and all that type of stuff. But you're kind of like a marketer that's also has some comical or comedian experience as well.
Yeah. My main Instagram now is not there's essentially zero marketing on there now. It's just all my stand-up stuff. I just released my special on YouTube actually about 4 days ago, and so my Instagram is mainly just stand-up clips and other ridiculous stuff that most people would probably find offensive. So do not go to my Instagram if you are easily offended or if words bother you, because you will be
Or
turned away.
if you're a potential client of Ian's, you probably don't want to go check out his Instagram either.
If people don't like that stuff, then I don't want to work with them anyways. So, and I
Right.
don't work one-on-one with people really, so it's all good. If they're offended, they're not my type of
You know,
person.
that is a fantastic method for filtering shitty leads through the funnel. You know what I'm saying? Like we're constantly having that discussion here internally. It's like, man, we just talk to people that are just a waste of time, not a good fit, and it chews up our calendar. And it's so frustrating. It's like, well, how do we filter these people out to find the perfect fit that is the perfect fit for us and we're the perfect fit for them? And I mean, the way you took it is a little it's unique for sure, but it's like, hey, why not just put yourself out there and let the bees attract themselves to the honey, right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I mean, I keep my business. I send my stand-up to my list, but I basically say, hey, do not click on any of these links or watch anything if you find words to be offensive. I still will help you make money online, but it's a separate thing. It's a very unique situation where you're a comedian and a business owner, marketer. So but I'm not worried about losing people or anything. To me, it's just, I would never want to build a business where I had to be someone other than myself anyways. So I'd rather just tell the truth all the time and say everything I want to say. And sometimes I'll stop swearing a little bit in emails. And then I'm like, if somebody's offended by the word shit, they're probably going to find something in one of my courses that bothers them. So I'd rather just speak how I talk and say everything I want to say. And if people don't like it, then that's fine. I stay away from politics.
Yeah, interesting. Even for us, right? For like at our agency, the people that I talk to that are the best conversations are people that have listened to the podcast, watched some YouTube videos, all that sort of stuff. So we build up this rapport before I had a chance to work with them. And those clients that sign on are typically with us for a long time, right? So it's almost like I'm assuming the people that are attracted to you, they almost are sort of like friends or clients, but they have this sort of they have a like for you, right? So there's a huge benefit to that. Would you agree?
Did it go out altogether?
There you go. You're good. Yeah, you're back.
My back. I'm going to move close to I have a house in the mountains and it should be good Wi-Fi. Normally it is, but I'll just go closer in case that was the problem.
Yeah, no worries there. So what I was saying was typically when you are, in a situation where you have a client come to you that knows you before you actually engage with them, they're typically around for a much longer time.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, that's why one of the biggest things for me with email is just it allows you an opportunity to build super deep relationships in a way that you don't really get to in other forms of media. Even if you have people who love you on Instagram doesn't show people every video just because they follow you. It's quicker, almost like not sound bits, but just clips and things. Whereas with email, it's sort of similar to podcasts where you get that depth of relationship where, especially I send more or less daily emails and you get to send 200 to 500 words a day where people really get to know you and build a relationship to you where, even if your list isn't huge, you can make a lot just because people actually have a deep relationship with you. Whereas if you send, once a week or once a month, whatever, people don't really give a shit who you are.
Did you start email marketing first or the comedy first?
Email first. I think I did my first set of stand up when I was 24. I just turned 34 last month, and so um, I did that for about a year, and then I took like 6 years off, and then I decided to take it seriously. Then COVID happened, and then the last few years been taking comedy seriously, and so I think I wrote my first emails making money when I was 19 or 20. So started out, when I was in college, and then have been doing it since then. So longer, most of my adult life, I've been writing emails.
Well, what caught my attention when you filled in the form to be on this podcast was the answer to the question proposed title for the podcast. And you wrote, "Don't be a boring piece of shit."
Yeah, I just wrote a book called How to Not Be a Boring Piece of Shit, that probably is coming out in the next month or two, and so that's the speech I've been giving lately, and I figured it's a fun topic and title, so I've got like a whole series of ways to not be a boring piece of shit, and that's kind of my whole thing with marketing in general. Is I don't think there's such thing as a saturated market. There's just bored markets and people who are tired of being marketed to in the same way or being, talked to about the same things. And so, sort of my belief is that it's better to be different than it is to be better. And it's also easier to be different. So, I originally kind of built my internet marketing following off of parody videos back in like when Facebook videos used to go real viral. And I did like, I had a character called Ly Topez, and I Can't Gardone, and Tiny Robbins, and Very Grinder Chuck, and these characters. Those went sort of viral, and then I would tell people to go to these fake domain names that I had bought, and I would redirect those domain names to an opt-in page. And I've had people buy $25,000 masterminds who the first thing they saw was, a Ly Topez video of me messing around. So for me, it's always been kind of, I don't think everybody should be making parody videos or anything like that, but I think just being oppositional to especially in the internet marketing world, there's so many douchebags and gurus with Lambos and all the shit that it's like, for me, I'd rather just go directly against the norm and, be different.
So, what was the angle on like a Ly Topez? What did you do?
The first one, I was at this chateau in France at this mastermind with all these entrepreneurs, and I had been joking around about this Ly Topez character. This is when like I'm Here in My Garage was like the biggest ad ever, and you couldn't open up YouTube without seeing it. And so the premise of the first one was I went into this chateau, into the library, and then I said, "This is the library. This is where I lie about all the books I read." So you don't actually have to read the books. You just put them there and tell people you've read them. Read the first page, read the last page, and now you're a genius. So that was basically, I just flipped around the T and the L and then made it LIE. So the idea was just, but I mean, that was the only one where I was kind of attacking him, but I've met Ty and, so the rest of them are more just, Very Grinder Chuck was just telling you not to sleep, give up sleep, dream while you're awake. Shit like that. And then Can't Gardone. Can't Gardone was one of the most fun ones because that's basically just a Southern guy who's real excited. 10x everything. Fuck 10x, baby. You got 100x.
Yeah.
Just for
It's interesting because all those characters, they I mean, well, all sort of the mantras that those characters stood for became fads pretty quickly. Right? You got like Ty Lopez was very big, obviously, into reading like a book a day type thing. Gary Vee was very big into the hustle culture, with became a fad pretty quickly. Obviously, back in 2016, everybody was about the hustle culture, but over time, people saw that the hustle just led to burnout, and more people were burning out, and that became a big problem. So I think he had to backpedal out of that for a while, where he no longer was pushing, hustle culture and stuff like that. We have a hustle poster on our wall here still that I look at all the time, and it's just like it's definitely not relevant. I should probably take it off the walls actually, as I look at it here. So, but yeah, it looks like Ian might have lost his connection over in Idaho. He's literally on the top of a mountain. Um, it's funny because there's that meme going around right now about being on top of the mountain and not having connection and not being able to make that Zoom meeting. I literally think that's what's happening right now with Ian as he tries to seek out maybe a better connection to get on this podcast. But one thing I'm excited to dive into with Ian is talking about how not to be a boring piece of shit. And as Ian is back, joined us here now. So, Ian, let's break into it. Let's talk a bit about how people can not be a boring piece of shit when it comes to email.
Yeah. So specifically with email, I think, so one of the things is kind of like one of the simplest places to start for not being boring is to just do the opposite of what most people are doing. So, if everybody has, just as an example, if everybody in your industry is doing a video with a Lambo in the background, maybe do a video with a, Ford Pinto in the background or a Honda Civic or something, and call that out and talk about how, like, I don't care about driving fancy cars. I care about people actually making money and quitting their jobs or whatever it might be. Just sort of being able to take an oppositional stance to whatever you're seeing in the market. And not everybody should do that. Like, again, this all comes down to authenticity as well, right? Like, don't do that if that doesn't make sense for you or your personality. Like, there's a great example with comedians, like Jim Gaffigan is a clean comedian, right? He doesn't swear, he doesn't say bad words, his stuff's super clean. Mine is not that. And would it be cool if I could work clean? Like, maybe, and it'd be fun to challenge myself to do a 30-minute set that's clean just to work on that. But like he said, he's like, okay, I don't really need to say the word fuck when I'm talking about mini muffins. His material is just not really that type of stuff. And ultimately it's like, what do you find funny? Like, if it's, when it comes to comedy, it's about talking about what you find funny. If that happens to be super offensive, then lean into it, so don't try to be something you're not, but really just finding opposites is a really good way. And specifically with email, one of the ways to do that is to just take, popular people within your niche and find one of their beliefs or stances and then just say why you think the opposite. If that is the case, it could be Alex Hormozy telling people between the ages of 18 and 30 that they should work 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. I think that's some of the dumbest advice ever. I think you should actually enjoy yourself in the time when you don't have children or a bunch of responsibilities. Maybe do go party, maybe do have fun. And if you can't go drink on a Friday night or a Saturday night and work on a Monday when you're 22, you got some bigger problems going on. That is the time you have the most energy, the most fun. Like, I don't think you should go be a miserable person who works constantly. That's my personal opinion, right? So I might take an email and say, Alex Hormozy is wrong, right? And something like that, and literally just take a stance against what somebody else says. And I'm not a hater. There are some email copywriters who will straight up just like start fights with other people and talk shit. That's not to me, it's always hate comes from below. It doesn't come from above. If you sit there just talking shit on people, like that's the difference between that and saying, here's this one belief or idea. Here's what I think. I respect this guy's belief and that he thinks that, but here's what I think when it comes to this. So it's not like about going out there and just being mean or anything like that, but that's one of the simplest ways to do it. Or just, in the fitness realm, such an easy one is just to take the common misconceptions people have. Like, some of the best emails you can ever write are what I call paradigm shift or myth busting emails. And you just take the commonly held beliefs people have and then just talk about why that's not true. Right. So if it's, okay, well, fat makes you fat. Okay, well, that's not true. So let's talk about why that's not true. BioTrust, they built themselves up to over 100 million a year, almost entirely through email and list building. And basically their whole methodology was take something popular in the news, like that's a fad right now. Like, it could have been when the 4-Hour Body came out and Tim Ferriss is talking about, avoid white carbs, right? They would release an ebook that was, you've probably heard that you should avoid white carbs. Did you know there's actually 4 white carbs that'll help you lose fat even faster? Enter your email to get the ebook now. And so they would just take a popular thing and just say, here's why you should do the opposite of this. Or did you know there are actually good versions of this thing or whatever, right? So Just finding sort of the things that are popular within culture and trends, and then, or you can say why it's a good thing as well. I mean, not everything has to be oppositional, but opposites are one of the easiest ways to just be more interesting. Right.
Well, that's it, right? And in a time now where we're all trying to like stand out amongst the noise, you have to have something that captures people's attention and gets them to stop from scrolling, right? So if that is taking taking a take on a narrative that's the popular narrative to capture the attention, yeah, you're right, albeit negative or positive, I think that's definitely a strong play. If you put that in the subject line to get those open rates up, which is another challenge.
And not just to be sensationalist. Like some people do it just to get a rise out of people, and it's like, well, if you don't have an actual belief on that, don't do it. It's not worth it. And then, so another way, especially with, so to me, like one of the biggest benefits of email, especially if you send, almost daily emails, is that you get to, like, with copywriting, people say, don't talk about yourself. The most powerful word in copywriting is you. But the reality is, when it comes to email, you actually want to be vain and you want to talk about yourself, because that's how you develop that relationship where people will, I have people who've been on my list for literally 10 years who've bought, I have like 55 courses, and there are people who've bought 50, because they have a relationship to me. And I talk about, oh, I was just in Germany and I went to go watch the Euros, and, I was in Aspen and traveling, and I'm talking about my life. And sometimes I go, they don't care. Whenever I mean people on my list or people respond, they love all the stories, all those little pieces of you. Like, connection happens around the rough edges. It's around the parts of you that are maybe the most unique. So like, one of the simplest ways to be more interesting is to combine things that aren't supposed to be combined. So like Naval Ravikant, who's one of my favorite modern philosophers, he's like, if you see a bear, that's interesting. If you see a bear riding a unicycle, now that's really interesting, right? If you even look at people like Joe Rogan, who's, arguably the most influential person on earth right now, he is a comedian, podcaster, fighter, health enthusiast, super into aliens and psychedelic drugs. Like, those things aren't supposed to be combined, right? So by combining these things that aren't supposed to be combined, you have somebody who's much more interesting than, say, a one-dimensional person who's like, all I do is email marketing, dude. That's it. That's what I do. That's all I care about. That's all I think about. And it's like, no, people are actually interested, even in, if it's an email list, if it's a podcast, if it's, whatever it is, talking about, I'm a diehard Liverpool fan. I play soccer. I played tennis in college. These things about yourself that people will draw these little connections to you, like, oh, this guy loves, soccer. That I like that about him. Or it's the weird things of like, Dan Kennedy doesn't have a cell phone, right? He's only got a fax machine. That's interesting, right? By being completely different from the rest of society. So there's the idiosyncrasies and sort of the odd things about you can become the most interesting things that people actually attach themselves to. And it's sort of like, the richer you get, the more shit you can just make up, and people stop calling you crazy. That, like, if it's a poor person, you're like, that guy's insane. But if it's a rich guy, you're like, oh, he's eccentric. He does all this weird stuff. So it's like, just combining that stuff that seemingly doesn't have a place, even being a marketer who's also a comedian, or really a comedian who's also a marketer, whatever, you have these things that don't necessarily go together, and that creates intrigue.
Yeah, it's refreshing to have that take too, right? Because I mean, 9 out of 10 marketers are just focused specifically on that angle without ever really, making themselves, sort of putting themselves out there and talking about their personal shit, right? Like that's, and I find that does work. Like I used to have a rock band. I used to be the front man of a rock band in Japan. And every time I speak, it's the first thing I drop. I'm like, this is where I come from. This is my background. This is why I'm on stage right now talking to you and why I'm comfortable up here doing it. Because I have this experience. But right there, you're making an immediate connection. And who doesn't like rock and roll, right? So it's like,
well, and there's going to be 10 to 20% of that audience who plays guitar, maybe, who's like, oh, that's fucking awesome. This guy plays guitar. And that's the thing I think so many people forget about marketing, is that you're selling 1%, maybe 10% of the people who see your sales pages. So you're not trying to sell everyone. You're not trying to get everyone to buy. You only need, especially if you're selling higher ticket, you only need 1 out of 100, 1 out of 200 or 300 to buy, to make lots of money. And so you only need those people who are super interested. And if they're not, then that's okay. Like, that's like, my thing is, I don't get offended by people who don't like my stuff or that are offended by me. Like, that's great. I'd rather it be a hot or cold relationship where people, and this is true even in my personal life, typically people either really like me or they don't. And I'm 100% okay with both, because it's not my job to control your response. It's my job to be myself. That's
Mhm.
it. That's my only job in life, is to be who I am and not have any filter of trying to pretend to be someone else. And so that means certain people, it doesn't mean I go into rooms full of, you know, people who believe completely different things and go, hey, I think you guys should believe this or whatever. But if I'm sitting at a dinner table and there's people there, I'm going to say everything I think. And if you don't like it, to me, it's actually like, I prefer to find out quickly if you're my type of person. So I have certain words I'll say that I won't say on here, where I go, if somebody's offended by this word or that word, let's put it out there early, because then I'm going to find out if they're actually going to be friends or not. Not for my sake, but because they're going to get offended down the road by something I've said, and I don't want to be a part of that.
Mm.
So it's really like, that's one of the big things about not being boring and stuff, is being polarizing. But it's that same thing I said, don't be polarizing. If you really like, horses, and you don't really have any controversial opinions, you don't have to be controversial to talk about that. Like, if you have controversial opinions, they'll probably say them, because you'll identify an audience who's, agrees with the things that you're saying. But yeah, largely just like, I'd rather, even with an email list, I'd rather have a smaller list full of really diehard fans than a bunch of lukewarm people who are like, oh, Ian Stanley, I think I'm on his list. I don't really remember. People be like, oh, I know that guy. Yeah, I'm on his list. And I know that he has 2 dogs and he lives in Idaho and he loves soccer and he does like, they'll tell you, when I meet people who are on my list, they'll tell me all these creepy things about him. I'm like, how do you know that? And I'm like, oh yeah, I tell
Yeah,
everybody.
that guy Ian Stanley, the guy with the Australian accent from Idaho.
Yeah, it's funny. Do people know me for extended periods and still think I'm Australian, even though I'm half English and half American?
Yeah,
It's a common daily occurrence.
that's funny. I love that on your bio too. You just call that right out. It's
Well, I
good.
got to put it there, because otherwise everybody's just like, where is this guy from? And
Yeah.
even in my bio, and I noticed more, I've had some stuff go really viral the last like 2 months, and I put in my bio, I just said, don't follow me if you're easily offended. And it's not even that easily offended people probably aren't fine, or they are, and they're in the comment section, losing their mind. But ultimately, like, it's more saying that it attracts people who hate people who are getting offended. So it's really more by saying, don't do this if you're this type of person. What I'm really saying is, follow this if you like controversial stuff.
Well,
And it's really, my stuff's not even that controversial. It's more just, I know that if you're a total snowflake, you're going to be bothered by the words that I say.
which is okay, right? Like, your tribe, and it's funny because even us at times, we want to target everybody and anybody, but really everybody and anybody is not our target audience. They're not going to like the way we do things, and it's, you've naturally just filtered out people that will never be a good customer or client of yourself by doing that. And another beautiful thing that I like what you said about putting yourself out there and letting your guard down is that people can make a connection with you, and they almost have an icebreaker when they go to talk to you after a show, for example. It's like, hey, the guy talked about this in his talk. It wasn't just about email marketing, but he's also the email marketing guy that does stand-up. I want to ask him about stand-up. That was the first thing I said to you at the beginning of our conversation. Wow, comedian, this is different, right?
Yeah. Well, it's funny too, because if somebody does come up to me after a speech at an event and they're like, hey man, I was wondering about this, about subject lines. And I'm like, okay, like, I'll answer and I'll talk to them. But if they go, hey, how do you come up with your jokes? I'm like, oh, you just got yourself into like a 30-minute conversation here, because this is what I want to talk about, And so it does end up connecting with people. And, comedy's also blown up over the last couple of years. I feel like comics have turned into, it was really weird. It was touch and go there during COVID. I actually genuinely didn't know if comedy was going to exist anymore, because in-person stuff was done. And then on top of that, it was the peak of cancel culture. And, you couldn't say, I had a guy get mad at me because in an ad, I said I was white while I was playing Can't Godone as a character. And he said, you can't say you're a white guy. And I was like, but I am. And he was like, that's offensive. I'm like, it's a white guy. it's never not a white kid. And I was like, what is going on with the world where what?
Mm-hmm.
And so, it was a weird time, but I think, people are interested in people that aren't one dimensional, or people who are so one dimensional that that's what's fascinating about them, right? Like I just watched a YouTube video of it was like this guy said, I spent 24 hours with the fittest man on the planet, and it's the guy with the highest VO2 max. And guess what? That guy's life isn't very interesting in the sense of like, I mean, this guy lives in the mountains in Spain. He eats 6,000 calories, runs up hills, swims, and bikes all day. That's not that interesting, but it actually is fascinating because he's the best in the world at it, right? He's one dimensional in the sense that, like, if you asked him about, his opinion on, farming techniques or fucking stand up or something, he might not have an interesting take. But when it comes to, hey, how do you train for this, do this, that's fascinating. So I think it's either like you become so incredibly obsessed with one topic, or you're a varied person with different interests, and that makes you interesting as well.
That probably also helps increase your followers as well, because I know this guy that lives out in the mountains and climbs hills every day. Hey, that's that guy. I want to give him a follow because he's different,
Right. Well, and also just becoming so obsessed that you become the best. Like that guy's literally I'm actually going to watch the Ironman in the Olympics just because I watched that video of that guy. Now I'm going to be rooting for that guy because I saw one video. He was not an interesting human. I can say that without being mean. He was not. He did not have charisma. But fuck, that guy could run up a hill without even breathing, and that's interesting.
That's interesting. I want to pivot the conversation a bit, because we talked a lot about keeping things authentic, specifically in email, with the emergence of AI, and how are you using the likes of ChatGPT, if at all, in your email correspondence?
Yeah, so I was very anti-AI for a while, for the first probably year, because I tried some stuff on ChatGPT and I was just disappointed. And I felt like, look, I'm a writer. I'm going to write. This is, is this beneficial? And then actually I had a student of mine who ended up building an AI tool based on my voice and all the things that all my email courses and teachings and stuff. And it wrote these emails that literally sounded more human than most humans. And so I was like, okay, shit. And so we actually ended up basically spent the last few months just fully developing that and launching that. And so now I'm very, very pro my own AI, which is obviously biased because it's mine. It's called Email Game Changers AI. And this is my true belief on it, and not just because I have an AI tool that I want people to subscribe to and pay for, is that ChatGPT is not very good at email. It's very good at certain things. So if you want to come up with great YouTube titles, ChatGPT will give you some of the best YouTube title ideas, because ChatGPT has scoured the internet for every video that has millions and hundreds of millions of views. You can say, come up with 10 YouTube video titles about email marketing, and it'll give you 10 decent ideas. And then you can say, rewrite those in the voice of Mr. Beast. What if Mr. Beast was an email marketer? What YouTube videos would you create? And it'll give you good shit. But when it comes to email, it's particularly terrible because, first off, ChatGPT hasn't scoured the internet for all the best emails that have ever gone out. Even if it did read all of the emails out there, it would think that the best emails were, hey, just circling back, just wanted to touch base, just a gentle reminder, and just wanted to nudge you and let you, like, all of the most boring, horrible, what I call corporate mayo bullshit that exists out there. All the stuff that we hate in email is basically what ChatGPT naturally writes. And the way I compare it is basically ChatGPT is a general doctor. It's good at a lot of things, but we use ChatGPT underneath the AI, but it's like having a surgeon who was trained specifically on one thing, and that thing is email. And so our tool allows you can actually write without writing. You can literally pick a box and it takes like a paradigm shift email, or what I call Mr. Miyagi, these different things, gives you an idea, you copy and paste, and it'll write a whole email. You can upload your own voice, and so it learns your voice and then writes like you. But so I think up until a few months ago, I would have said I'm not a big fan, because from what I've seen from ChatGPT is very generic corporate mayo sounding emails. Our tool, in my opinion, creates actual human sounding, like non-soulless shit. And so the reality is I'm not the demographic for my own tool. It's really a general business owner, a person who has an email list that they know they should send more emails and more personal emails and wants to make more. But for me, the way I mainly use it now is for ideas and to sort of punch up my own stuff. Like we have a copy coach in there, so you can copy and paste an email and it'll come back with like, here's what I would change. Here's some different, words I would use and stuff. And so that's mainly for me, it's going in there and just or putting in a story, like a few sentences, and then it'll write the whole story for me. And so that's a pretty cool feature too, is story-based emails just work so well. Like we were saying, they develop an authentic connection to you as a person. Even if it's a business that's the front-facing thing, having some sort of human being that they can connect to an email is typically, more powerful than just a brand name itself. So that's really the main thing. Is I've found that ChatGPT is not very good at email, and that could change as the different versions come out, and they could put me out of business. But at the same time, what I've seen is actually we updated ChatGPT within our tool, and it got worse. So sometimes as they release new methods, they can get good at certain things and worse at other stuff. So to me, it's like AI isn't about replacing people. It's about amplifying it and making you sound maybe more interesting and more human rather than trying to use it to be lazy, right? Like the amount of people who send, one of my main courses teaches people how to land email clients and get paid to write emails for other people. And I tell people to write, like we have in the tool now, you can write these custom emails to businesses. But even within that, adding in 1 or 2 sentences that shows that you actually went to the website. Like I get fucking pitched every day. Somebody sends me and the funny thing is I get pitched by email people saying, hey, I'd like to improve your copy. And sometimes if I feel like being a dick, I'll just be like, yo, Google me. Like you're an idiot. And you can tell though, and I'll only do that because I literally had a person email me with their template for reach outs to do like video editing, and they didn't even fill in the template. It said, insert interesting thing about the person you're talking to. Like, and so to me, it's like, if you're using AI to just be incredibly lazy, I think that's a negative. If you're using it to be better at what you do, to be more creative and more innovative, I think if you view it as an amplifier and a multiplier, not as a replacement, I think that's way more logical than people trying to be so lazy that they're like, well, let me just let this robot do everything for me. And then you lose the human.
100%, man. Like even like, well, I use ChatGPT quite a bit. I have my customized GPTs for each of the tasks that I do. I have a personalized GPT. I uploaded my book to this knowledge, so it knows my style of writing, and it's fantastic. And I'll use it as a helper to write certain emails because I'm a dog shit copywriter. So thankfully, it exists for that reason, right? But even so, I'll still have to scan it because the odd delve or unlock or elevate will be thrown in there. And immediately it's like I've never seen the word delve as much as I have in the last 6 months, over the last 6 years. Right?
Yeah.
Like the word delve.
There'll be those words and those things where you go, fuck, this is just not how a human talks or how I would talk. And that's what's frustrating. And I'm not like, even with our tool, it's not like there are times you can just copy and paste and it's good to go. And there are times you're going to make little tweaks, but if it gets you 80% of the way there, that's, a huge win. But it is that like some of the stuff it says, like we've had to untrain it on semicolons and certain stuff where it wants to write this just very almost like one of the worst things about at least the American school system is the way that they teach writing makes everybody pretty much hate writing. I'm a writer. And that's what I've done professionally for over a decade. And I hated writing in school. And that's the irony, is I became a writer, but I hated not writing. I hated the way that they made you write, and they'd say, well, I need you to do 10,000 words on this topic, and I need you to cite 10 sources and do all this shit. And it's like, what if I can do it in 2,000 words? Like, you're literally teaching inefficient writing. You're teaching people to use extra words to describe a thing. The best writers use the least amount of words to say the most things.
Mm-hmm.
And literally in school, you're taught to use as many words as possible. And it makes you fucking horrible, and it makes you hate it because you're like, I've already said it. I wrote a paper in college about why Batman was the ultimate altruist, and I ended up so annoyed because I had to put in all these sources. I'm like, there are no sources on this. I'm the source. These are my thoughts, not some fucking book. Like, why am I having to ruin my paper with all of this generic crap? And so I think that's carried over into how people think that you're supposed to be professional and, say all the right words and stuff. And I think, every business owner I've met, not all of them, but most of them will have a drink, and maybe they swear sometimes, and maybe they're a normal person who likes to have normal conversations. They don't want to be spoken to like a corporate, just boring person. They don't want, nobody's stoked when they get the email, hey, just circling back, just wanted to check back in and, say hello. Like, nobody wants that. They just think that that's what you're supposed to do because it's the, professional thing or whatever. But ultimately, I think the more you sound like a person who's having a conversation, and that's something that I'll, like, people who read my book or were on my list, they'll be like, you talk and write exactly the same. It's like, yeah, that's the goal. It should be fast. It should be fun. It should be conversational, not, corporate mayo.
I like how you have incorporated the ability to record the way you talk and the words you use and voice, and then translate that into the ability to churn out messaging in that same sort of context. Because a lot of people write differently than they speak, but it's so much easier to read content when it's the way it's spoken, right?
100%. Yeah. I mean, people really enjoy that conversational tone. There's a reason why the best copy is written at the third grade level, and I'd recommend anybody, whoever wants to get better at writing, go to hemingwayapp.com. It's a free thing. I've used it forever, and just start to put all of your writing into it and try to get yourself down to a third grade level. And that doesn't mean that you're dumbing it down, right? What it means is that you're writing in a concise way that's easy to understand. It's not about stupidity. It's about, it's about efficiency, really. And so, even the most popular songs of all time are written at like the third grade level. Even Eminem, people are like, oh, the best lyricist, third grade level. Nickelback, fifth grade level. Maybe the most hated band ever, although I don't think they deserve the hate that they've gotten. They're writing at a fifth grade level. So it's like people want you to communicate in a way that's not like college level. Like, you can tell when a person's writing because they think that they're smart and they're trying to sound smart, and it is so unappealing. Like, just because you can use a big fancy word doesn't mean you should. Like, most of the time it just makes you look like a douche.
So true.
In my opinion.
Yeah, are you speaking much? Are you speaking on stages much these days? Are you going around and going to conferences and stuff like that?
Yeah, if there's a conference that I want to go to and speak at, I'll go. I haven't been as much this year. I've been doing more stand up, but I'll go. I'll go to most events if I'm going to speak. What I've stopped doing is going to events where I'm not speaking. I find it, especially the copywriting world, there's a lot of scammy people in the industry, and some of the stuff they do is a little gross. Not so much the copywriters who teach it, but the ones who do it. But yeah, no, I go and I love speaking. Is just so fun because it's so much easier than stand up. And so it feels like cheating to be able to go up and speak and, screw around and make people laugh when they're just expecting to kind of be bored and learn, and then they get to learn. And that's why this new How to Not Be a Boring Piece of Shit speech is my favorite I've ever done. It's been a lot of fun.
So are you combining? So hold on, you enjoy doing the educational speaking or comedy better? Which one do you find better, and which one's more?
Nothing compares to stand up. Like, stand up is like if you were a heroin addict and then you started, I don't know, drinking kombucha. Like, it's an incredible drug. Like, it's such a challenge. You're so insanely present for stand up. Like, you can't be anywhere else. You can't think about anything else. And there's only one goal, and that's to make people laugh. And if they're not laughing, you're not doing your job. And so I think one thing that I've been good at with stand up is adapting to crowds, because I've spoken at a lot of different conferences where sometimes you go up and, like, people who want to learn how to build Amazon stores might be the most boring people in a crowd. Like, there's a difference between them and copywriters. And then, like, a real estate conference, those people are fun. They're each crowd, you have to adapt to what they're interested in. Did they just eat a massive lunch of carbs and they're all trying to fall asleep? And now I have to work twice as hard to get them back. So I've always learned how to like adapt. And I'll see comedians who they're like, this is my set, and this crowd doesn't like my set, but I'm going to keep doing it. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, change it up, do something different. So stand-up's always going to be the most fun thing. There's nothing like it, but I really enjoy speaking because it's a real flow state in a different way, where the fact that you're making people laugh, like having people come up after a speech and they're like, oh my God, that was so fun. Like I was bored and I was listening to these people and that was just such a refreshing, holy shit. And I have 2 pages or 3 pages of notes. That's a lot of fun. It's a really, cool way to do things. But as far as a pure feeling, stand-up's always going to be the thing. It'd be like, how does, for you as a musician, right? Like the difference between playing for an amazing crowd and maybe you play the best song, maybe you play the best you ever played, but you're at home. Like, or somebody listen, it'd probably be a better comparison, be like them listening to you or a recording, or a track on the radio or something. Like it's cool, but it's not quite the same as that live drug.
I still get just as nervous right before I go up to speak as I did when I had my band. I still have that same. Oh yeah, like even that's what I was speaking in Tel Aviv, Israel. I can remember this one speech I was doing in 2019. I was so nervous. It was 10 o'clock in the morning. Typically, I like to have at least a drink or two before I go up there just to loosen the edge. And there was no alcohol to be found in Tel Aviv, Israel at 10 o'clock in the morning. So I had to crush five espressos, crushed them, and then went up on stage. And I just needed an icebreaker. It was a packed house too. And I was just like, I got on the mic and I was just like, okay, when I say Facebook, you say ads. Facebook ads. And Israel people are just they have so much energy and they're so fun, and they all got into it. But man, if that was like crickets, I would have been on a slippery slope to probably a very shitty presentation because I would have had
and you have to fight back and like find. That's what I enjoy about speaking too, is every crowd's different. Like there's, like I said, I've done it at like an Amazon conference and they are just quiet people. They're like, I just want to be able to make money without talking. And then you go to real estate conference and these people are having a blast. I'm like, dude, I will speak at any real estate conference ever. And they also go out after the speeches. They're out, partying and having fun. All the marketers are like, well, if I don't get 14 hours of sleep, I'm not going to build my business. And I'm like, Jesus, maybe you should get better at business. But I don't get nervous for speeches unless I have one story I tell sometimes about my dog and how he almost died. And I'll get nervous more because I might cry on stage. So that's more of that. But I compare stand-up is kind of like Fight Club for speaking. It's like once you've done that, it just turns down the volume on everything else. So it's like you just don't really get, for speaking, I just don't really get nervous because I know, I mean, if it was quiet, it would be very uncomfortable for me because I know I'm going to make jokes and mess around. But like you can technically give a speech that's amazing and everybody's dead quiet. It's better that they're quiet than talking. But with stand-up, it's very clear. If they're not laughing, you're not doing your job, and you can feel it. So, but no, I love speaking a lot, and it's so easy comparatively.
Yeah. Ian, this has been awesome. If our audience has any questions for you or how to get in touch, you dropped off email, Game Changers AI. Is there any place else where people can reach out to you?
Yeah, you can go to Instagram at Becoming Ian Stanley if you want to see my more, comedic stuff. But you could DM me there. And then emailgamechangers.com is where the AI tool is. There's a free trial, and you can test it out. And if it sucks, then you can not keep using it. I don't think it will suck. But and then I did just put my special on YouTube. So it's if you look up Ian Stanley Comedy Special on YouTube, I'm starting to put a bunch of stuff out on there. It's a brand new channel, but putting out a bunch of, I've got a fake Shark Tank show called The Wolf Den that'll be coming out soon. It's a parody of Shark Tank and a bunch of stupid shit. So
cool. Yeah. Awesome. We'll definitely check it out. Ian, thanks for joining us on the show.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks for having me.